On the late night of March 6, 2007, Shi Weichun, a farmer living in a small town in Bole City, Xinjiang Autonomous Region, suddenly received a strange phone call. The voice on the other end was deliberately lowered, each word spoken with menace. "Your grandson is currently in my hands. If you want him safe, prepare 150,000 yuan, about $20,000, in ransom within 4 hours, and don't even think about calling the police, or it's certain death." Hearing these threats in the dead of night, Weichen couldn't help but feel confused. An honest farmer like him, living by working the fields, leading an ordinary life, how could he be involved in kidnapping and extortion? This was completely absurd. Weichen wasn't afraid at all, and immediately retorted sharply, "You've been watching too many Hong Kong movies. Why are you calling to harass people in the middle of the night?" After saying this, he hung up immediately, not giving the other party a chance to say more. Shortly after, the phone rang again. It was the same voice, but this time the tone became much harsher and more threatening. The self-proclaimed kidnapper insisted forcefully that Weichen's grandson named Shi Xingjin was currently in his hands, and if he didn't prepare the full 150,000 yuan ransom, the boy's life would be difficult to preserve. Shi Weichun became even more annoyed and angry. He had only one grandson named Xingjin, who was already over 20 years old and working away from home. How could he possibly be kidnapped? This time he scolded directly, "I don't have any money to give you, do whatever you want," and hung up decisively again. Initially, these two strange calls in the middle of the night didn't concern or worry Shi Weichun at all. However, by the next morning, the more he thought about it, the more uneasy and suspicious he became. The caller spoke with such certainty and confidence. Who would be so idle as to call and harass others in the middle of the night like this? Could it be that Xingjin was truly in danger? With an anxious mind, Shi Weichun hurriedly called his grandson, but the phone was turned off. He then called his younger brother to inquire about the situation. His brother also seemed confused and worried when he confirmed that Xingjin indeed hadn't come home to sleep last night and hadn't informed anyone in the family beforehand. Hearing his brother's words, Shi Weichun suddenly felt worried and uneasy. Could what the robber said over the phone actually be accurate? Not daring to delay any longer, he hurriedly called the police. After receiving the report, the police immediately conducted a meticulous investigation into the Shi family's circumstances. This was a simple farming family that had lived by agriculture for generations, with quite modest economic conditions, and had never had any disputes or conflicts with anyone. Shi Xingjin was now 22 years old. In the context of relatively stable social security, kidnapping cases hadn't appeared for a very long time. Moreover, with the Shi family's ordinary economic situation and nothing special about them, they seemed to have absolutely no reason to become targets of criminals specializing in kidnapping and extortion. So what was the true nature of this incident? With a high sense of responsibility, the police quickly deployed comprehensive and urgent investigative work. Within just one day of non-stop work, through meticulous tracing of the phone number that had called Shi Weichun and collecting and cross-referencing testimony from related witnesses, they discovered an important clue. On the fateful night when Xingjin mysteriously disappeared, he had visited a friend named Zhang Deiyue. Deiyue emerged as the main suspect in the entire case. Zhang Deiyue, 28 years old, was quickly arrested for investigation. What surprised the police officers involved in the case was that just 2 years earlier, the police had already handled a case directly related to Deiyue. At that time, he was operating a business in the cotton textile field, but had committed serious fraud during the transportation of goods, deceiving and embezzling up to 60,000 yuan, about $8,000. Due to these illegal acts, he had been processed by police and sentenced by the court to a suspended prison term. The police couldn't have imagined that this repeat offender would now be involved in a much more serious case, kidnapping and extortion. When police questioned Deiyue about what he and Xingjin had done on the night of the incident and whether he knew the other party's whereabouts, Deiyue showed extreme resistance. He kept muttering, "Let me think, let me consider." But when asked about what he had done, where the person went, or what ultimately happened, Deiyue remained completely silent, not uttering a word. Initially, the police still thought the kidnapping of Xingjin might just be a misunderstanding. But now, witnessing Dayue's extremely uncooperative attitude during questioning, the police realized this case was certainly not simple. However, Dayue was truly determined not to confess anything, putting the police in a deadlock. According to legal regulations, when detaining a suspect for 24 hours, if the suspect denies criminal behavior and the police don't have sufficient evidence to verify it, they must release the person. On the night Xingjin disappeared, someone had seen him enter the house that Dayue was renting. The police quickly went to the scene, determined to find evidence related to the case before Dayue was released. The house Dayue rented was an old civilian dwelling with extremely simple furnishings that didn't seem suspicious at first glance. After 2 hours of meticulous searching, the police finally discovered blood spatters on a flower pot in the corner of the house. Could this blood belong to Xingjin? Taking blood samples for DNA testing would require at least 3 days. With such thin evidence, the police could only continue searching for additional clues in the house. It wasn't until dawn that a pile of ash in the corner of the outer courtyard wall suddenly caught the police's attention. In such a secluded corner, who would light a fire here? When they turned over the ash pile, the police were shocked to discover blackened human bone fragments and remaining teeth inside. This horrifying discovery made everyone shudder. Finally, the police understood why Xingjin, a vibrant 22-year-old young man, had suddenly vanished without a trace. Evidence collected at the scene was sent for testing immediately. The interrogation of Dayue also continued throughout the night. Faced with undeniable evidence discovered at the scene, Dayue finally had no choice but to break his stubborn silence. He was forced to admit that Xingjin had indeed died at his hands, and the cause of this tragedy had to be traced back 3 months earlier. In early 2007, while working odd jobs to make a living, Dayue had happened to meet Xingjin, a young man exactly 6 years younger than him. Xingjin possessed a character that quite liked to show off and had a very heavy vanity complex. Every time he interacted with people around him, he often tended to either blatantly flaunt or subtly hint that his family had extremely prosperous economic conditions, with both his father and uncle being talented and respectable people who could earn huge incomes of hundreds of thousands of yuan each year. The speaker may be careless, but the listener pays close attention. When witnessing Xingjin continuously boasting about his family's wealth and success like this, Dayue, who was accustomed to living by crooked and dishonest means, immediately conceived dark and evil intentions, wanting to implement a plan to kidnap Xingjin and extort a large sum of money from his family. From then on, Dayue began actively approaching and building a friendship with Xingjin. After 3 months of persistently building friendship and trust, Dayue felt the opportunity was completely ripe to begin implementing his dark plan. On the fateful day of March 6, 2007, he cleverly lured Xingjin to the house he was renting. After deliberately making the victim drunk and unconscious, Dayue tied up Xingjin and made the extortion call to Weichen. However, what Zhang Dayue could never have imagined was that Xingjin's boastful stories were just fabricated tales with no truth. The family didn't actually have such money. When Weichen received the phone call, he not only firmly refused to pay the ransom, but also severely scolded Dayue. In a rage from being deceived and feeling ashamed of his plan's failure, Dayue completely lost control of himself. Despite Xingjin's desperate and agonizing pleas, he cruelly murdered the victim, then with terrifying coldness proceeded to dismember and completely burn the body. Dayue was exactly the type of criminal who completely disregarded the law, ready to plan in detail and execute serious kidnapping just for bottomless greed and base personal desires. When he discovered his extortion plot had completely failed, he didn't hesitate at all to commit the barbaric act of murder and then burn the corpse, an extremely cold, brutal method that completely disregarded and trampled human life like trash. The evil nature and severity of this entire act was truly horrifying beyond words. The trial and sentencing process proceeded at breakneck speed, and within that same year, Dayue was sentenced by the court to the strictest penalty according to legal provisions, the death sentence. July 21, 2008, was Daewoo's final fateful day, the day of execution. Shackled tightly from hands to feet, he was escorted strictly by police to the execution ground. Throughout this journey, Daewoo still appeared relatively calm and composed. However, just as the court police had completed identity verification procedures, Daewoo suddenly shouted unexpectedly, "Your Honor, I have something extremely important and urgent to report. I clearly know about another murder case, and I know exactly who the real perpetrator is. Please mercifully grant me one last chance in life to be able to perform meritorious service to atone for my crimes." This dramatic and unexpected scene, like something happening in movies, left all the investigative personnel present feeling confused and troubled. What devilish game was this dangerous criminal planning to play next? Such a sudden and abnormal situation was truly something that had never happened before. A death row inmate suddenly declaring they knew about another serious case that needed to be reported right before the sacred moment of execution was indeed unprecedented in history. The death sentence had been decided definitively and unchangeably by courts at all levels. Absolutely no one could have imagined that Daewoo could create such chaos and confusion right at the solemn execution ground. Not to mention ordinary people without experience, even experienced judges who had participated in many executions were encountering for the first time in their careers a case where a death row inmate suddenly declared having a major case to report right before execution. In this dilemma, they had no choice but to temporarily halt all procedures to give him the opportunity to present clearly and completely. Daewoo began conducting detailed and systematic testimony. In the autumn of 2006, a young woman named Yang Yan from the distant hometown of Yili had come to Bowl City to seek work and livelihood. This girl had been brutally violated by an evil person and then murdered, with the victim's body secretly buried beside a water ditch in the local vast cotton-growing area. The direct perpetrator of this horrific murder case was a man named A.G. Regarding time, characters, location, and the entire sequence of events, Daewoo presented everything with clear evidence and detailed specifics. All personnel present at the execution ground couldn't help but feel extremely cautious and serious about this unexpected information. For this reason, the execution of Daewoo's death sentence had to be temporarily postponed after seeking guidance from higher leadership. Immediately, investigative personnel took him to the scene he had described to conduct identification and specific guidance. When they arrived at the exact location, after a long day of tireless digging and meticulous searching, indeed at the precise position Daewoo had indicated, they unexpectedly discovered a female corpse in a state of serious and horrifying decomposition. According to professional forensic expert examination results, the hyoid bone near the base of the victim showed clear signs of fracture, from which experts deduced that the direct cause of death was suffocation caused by external force impact. Particularly noteworthy, right beside the corpse, the search team also discovered a citizen ID card, and the name clearly written on it was exactly Yang Yan. A death row inmate about to be executed suddenly revealed another completely different murder case. What deep mysteries lay behind this? To clarify the true identity of victim Yang Yan, the police decided to drive to her hometown in Yili, Xinjiang, to find and interview her mother. The mother, with unbearable pain, shared that her beloved daughter had mysteriously disappeared since September 2006, and for 2 years since then, the entire family had continuously searched for their daughter throughout the country, but still hadn't received any news or clues. Notably, the time of Yang Yan's disappearance completely coincided with the time of death of the female corpse, according to expert examination results. After experts conducted meticulous DNA comparison and analysis between the mother and DNA samples taken from the female corpse at the scene, the final results definitively confirmed that the deceased woman was indeed Yang Yan. Daewoo hadn't lied about this matter. So the question arose, why could he know so precisely about Yang Yan's burial location? What was the actual connection and relationship between Daewoo and Yang Yan's tragic death? Daewoo testified that his older brother named Denian owned a fairly large cotton field, while Yang Yan had worked in his brother's cotton field for some time, which was how the two had the opportunity to meet, though they didn't have much deep contact and interaction. According to his testimony, Yang Yan had a romantic relationship with a young Mongolian man named AG, who also worked in this area. At the end of October 2006, on a fateful day, AG came to Daewoo in a panic, confessing that he had accidentally killed Yang Yan and forcing Daewoo to help move the body and assist with burial. Naturally, Daewoo initially extremely didn't want to get involved in this matter, but AG had used a knife to threaten and force him to help. Finally, the two had buried Yang Yan's body together at the location beside the water ditch near the cotton field. From that time on, Daewoo claimed he had never once mentioned burying this body to anyone. The murder case truly existed and had basis, thanks to which Daewoo was temporarily allowed to keep his life. However, when police followed Daewoo's testimony to pursue and arrest suspect Ajay, they were suddenly informed of shocking news. About a year earlier, Ajay, while drunk, had been driving an unlicensed motorcycle at excessive speed and crashed straight into a tree, dying on the spot. Notably, Daewoo had been arrested for the Xinjiang case before Ajay died in the traffic accident, so he had absolutely no knowledge of Ajay's death. If Daewoo's testimony was true, then both the perpetrator and victim were already dead, making continued investigation of the case impossible. However, the police still had quite a few doubts and questions about this mysterious murder case that remained unanswered. Suspicions began arising in the investigators' minds. What reason could cause Ajay, someone in a passionate love relationship, to cruelly kill his own girlfriend? Moreover, according to common logic, a perpetrator after committing a crime always just wants to cover up traces, not letting anyone know. So why would Ajay actively force Daewoo to help bury the body? Wasn't Ajay worried that Daewoo might reveal this matter? All of this couldn't be reasonably explained. Police began suspecting that Daewoo was certainly hiding something important. To gather more information about the actual situation that year, the police conducted an extensive and meticulous inquiry and investigation campaign in the local community. The results they received were shocking and unbelievable information that caused the entire case situation to take a completely reversed turn. According to people who understood the situation and knew the facts in the area, in reality, although Yang Yan and AG worked in the same area, the two had absolutely no romantic relationship as had been testified, and even ordinary friendship couldn't be considered to exist. On the contrary, Yang Yan truly had a very special and unusual relationship with Denian, the owner of the cotton field and also Daewoo's older brother. Many local residents had rumors that Denian and Yang Yan were actually secret lovers. The police seemed to have found an important breakthrough clue. It was very likely that Yang Yan, during her time working at the cotton field, had a complex and troublesome relationship with Denian. Because Denian already had his own family, it was very possible that this older brother wanted to escape Yang Yan's continuous restraint and harassment, so he decided to act cruelly. And Daewoo might have helped his brother in committing the crime, so he had remained silent all this time. When facing imminent execution, he reluctantly used this matter to try to perform meritorious service for himself, but at the same time didn't want his brother to be exposed and caught, so he deliberately blamed Ajay, someone who had died in a traffic accident. This way, all details in the story could be reasonably explained. Police immediately sought out Denian for questioning. However, Denian firmly denied any special relationship with Yang Yan, completely like his younger brother Daewoo's attitude before, refusing to admit or reveal anything. Police at this time didn't have other specific evidence in hand, so they had no way to force Denian to testify. To seek new breakthroughs for the case, investigative personnel decided to return to Yang Yan's home for a second time, conducting an extremely meticulous and careful search of each of her personal belongings. In an old paper box, they discovered a very large number of love letters. Surprisingly, the person who had exchanged romantic correspondence with Yang Yan was none other than Daewoo's older brother, Denian. The two had maintained continuous correspondence for 6 long years, and these letters detailed the sweet and romantic emotional moments of both. Particularly from 2000, they had officially confirmed and established a formal love relationship with each other. Even Yang Yan's mother felt extremely surprised and shocked by the deep emotional content in the letters. According to the mother's account, many years ago, she had brought Yang Yan, who was still very young at only 18 years old, to Denian's land to do cotton-picking work for a living. From that time, Denian had shown great affection and concern for Yang Yan, even openly expressing his sincere feelings of love. However, because Yang Yan was still too young and immature at the time, the mother had firmly disagreed with this relationship. After completing the cotton-picking work, the mother had brought Yang Yan back to their hometown. The mother completely trusted that the two would no longer have any interaction, but could never have imagined that Denian and her daughter had secretly continued their clandestine relationship hidden from everyone. This secret love affair that no one knew about encountered a major change in 2003. Yang Yan had grown up and matured, and according to her parents' arrangement and decision, she had to marry a man from the same village. Denian, in a situation of loving but not being able to have her, 1 year after Yang Yan's marriage, he too had accepted marrying according to his family's wishes. However, the marriage arranged by parents couldn't erase Yang Yan's feelings for Denian, making her married life unhappy and full of suffering. Within just 2 short years, she decided to divorce her husband. Notably, throughout this time, correspondence between the two had never been interrupted even once. Until 2006, Yang Yan still harbored hopes of reconciling and returning to Denian. Fearing family disapproval and interference, Yang Yan decided to hide from her mother and secretly return to Denian's home. Police initial suspicions had been completely correct. Denian truly hadn't been honest with police from the beginning. Under pressure from undeniable evidence from the large number of love letters, police decided to seek out Denian for a second, more serious interrogation. This time, Denian finally had no choice but to admit and tell the complete truth about what had really happened between him and Yang Yan. In August 2006, after Yang Yan completed her divorce procedures, she wrote to inform Denian that she wanted to return to the Zhang household to do cotton-picking work as before. Due to deep feelings that had existed for many years, Denian had agreed to let her return. During Yang Yan's time doing cotton-picking work, she had actively proposed that the two reconcile and reunite as before, but at this time Denian already had a complete family with wife and children, and family responsibilities and obligations had surpassed all romantic feelings from the past, so he had decisively refused Yang Yan's proposal. After completing the cotton-picking work, Denian had paid Yang Yan 1,500 yuan, about $200 in wages, and asked her to return home. He explained that he previously didn't want to mention this experience because he didn't want these complex and troublesome matters to negatively affect his current stable life. Moreover, he insisted that he certainly couldn't have intentions to harm Yang Yan for such personal reasons. However, because police still lacked direct and specific evidence to prove guilt, after analyzing the situation seriously and carefully, they decided to temporarily allow Denian to go home. The case once again fell into deadlock. It seemed all hope of solving this case had become extremely dim and distant. However, from carefully analyzing Zhang Deyue's testimony, police discovered a suspicious clue that caused the entire case to once again take a completely reversed turn. An experienced police officer questioned, why did Dayu deliberately blame Yang Yan's death on Ajay, someone who was already dead? Notably, Ajay's death occurred after Dayu was arrested. As a death row inmate, the few family visits were all recorded and closely monitored, but Dayu's family members during the entire detention period had never mentioned Ajay's name. Through systematically eliminating and reorganizing all information Dayu could access after being arrested, police noticed an important detail. During permitted times in the exercise yard, Dayu could interact and chat with other inmates being detained. Among them was an inmate named Kirjite, who knew both Dayu and the deceased Ajay. In April 2008, Kirjite had been sentenced to prison for theft. According to his testimony, during one exercise yard session, he had happened to meet Dayu, and in casual conversation had inadvertently mentioned that Ajay had died. An important question arose. If Zhang Deyue knew clearly the entire detailed process of Yang Yan's death, could the person who actually killed Yang Yan be him, while Ajay was simply a scapegoat he deliberately threw at police to mislead the investigation? On September 3, 2008, after thorough and complete preparation, the Special Task Force conducted another interrogation of Deyue. To make him say more, police cleverly requested Dayu to retell his previous testimony once more. During the retelling process, Dayu gradually relaxed his guard and began testifying in detail about how he and Ajay had disposed of the body together. Just then, police suddenly interjected unexpectedly and asked, "Why did you say Ajay was the killer?" Dayu, without needing time to think, immediately answered naturally, "Because Ajay is dead." Police continued pursuing, "So how did you know Ajay was dead?" Dayu suddenly seemed to realize something, hurriedly denying and retracting his previous words. However, clear and undeniable contradictions had appeared between his earlier and later testimony. Police quickly seized this important breakthrough and immediately pressed forcefully. "Did Kirjite tell you that Ajay was dead?" After a period of tense confrontation and interrogation, Dayu's entire body became limp, his face turned deathly pale, and he was finally forced to confess the complete dark truth about cruelly murdering Yang Yan. "Why did you say Ajay was the killer?" "Because I knew Ajay was dead." That day, Yang Yan, in a mood of sadness and disappointment, was preparing to leave. Dayu knew his brother had paid Yang Yan 1,500 yuan in wages. All of this caused Dayu, who had long been eyeing Yang Yan's beautiful appearance, to conceive evil intentions. That evening, he had pretended to be kind and offered to take Yang Yan to the train station, using a motorcycle to deceive and lure Yang Yan to go with him. When passing through Denian's cotton field, Dayu stopped the bike and began crudely harassing Yang Yan, but when firmly refused by the other party, Dayu, in rage and shame, cruelly murdered Yang Yan and immediately dug a hole to bury the body. 4 months after murdering Yang Yan, Dayu continued to strike again with Xingjin, leading to his arrest and death sentence. He knew clearly that his life wouldn't last much longer. During the long wait for execution day, completely by chance from conversation with Kirjite, he learned news of Ajay's death, and immediately meticulously and cunningly fabricated a complete false story. Zhang Dayu thought himself clever and able to deceive everyone, imagining he could blame Yang Yan's death on the deceased Ajay, then he himself could earn merit to atone for crimes and escape strict death penalty. However, lies, no matter how cleverly constructed, will ultimately be exposed. The result was that with increasingly heavy accumulated crimes, Zhang Dayu still completely couldn't escape his predetermined fate of execution. And that concludes today's case. Thank you for following along, and we'll see you in the next videos.